When I'm low on video ideas, I go to the darkest parts of MTG Goldfish to get myself some inspiration. This is when I discovered Is It Dice Factory the other day, a deck solely piloted by Joshua on the SCG Tour. At a first glance, his list is really nice. A deck built around Corridor Monitor and Kiki-Jiki, a simple combo that can make infinite monitors to kill the opponent. To get enough mana to do this, we have the Core Tapper Surge Node package, a simple synergy that lets us move charge counters onto our Ever-Flowing Chalice or Cornucopias to build up a ton of mana on the early turns. Personally, I think Joshua's build is suboptimal for Magic Online, specifically because the metagame is so full of Rakdos Scam and removal heavy decks right now, so I decided to spice up Josh's deck a bit. My build is similar but focuses way more on the combo, having access to 4 Emrys with Mishra's Baubles to draw a lot of cards, and to utilize all the milling and removal in the format with the Soul Cauldron. This will let us copy either Kiki-Jiki or Urza that could be in our graveyard to let us have more ways to combo and get more value on later turns. This deck is looking to make a ton of mana, draw a ton of cards, and most definitely make a ton of tokens in this video. You need to watch to the end because this deck is really sick. To start the first match of this video, round 1 we have to mulligan to 6, but we have a strong opening hand because we have an Emry and a turn 1 Surge Node. But things aren't looking too good for us because the opponent has a basic Swamp and a Thoughtseize to start the game. Things are looking even worse when the opponent takes our Cauldron, so we just untap, find an Imperial Recruiter and play our Emry. The reason why them taking the Cauldron with the Thoughtseize is scary is because they most likely have a removal spell for this Emry. I don't think we can just not play the Emry because it will always have Summoning Sickness and they will always have the removal spell in their hand, so when we find the third land off the top, I'm quite happy because now we can play our Imperial Recruiter, get the Urza Lord High Artificer from our deck, and hope that the opponent doesn't have a removal spell for that, and we find a mana source off the top. I also want to add for the competitive players watching this video, I made a big mistake fetching Basic Island with my Scalding Tarn because now when they Field of Ruin my Steam Vents, I have no basics left in the deck, so if the opponent has any more Field of Ruin effects, then they will be Stone Raiding us. But then I should also highlight, now that we find the Steam Vents, if they Field of Ruin the Steam Vents it doesn't matter because the 4th mana source isn't necessary here, especially putting Urza on the table, so who knows. After playing my whole hand, getting in for 1 damage and passing, the opponent has a Cabal Coffers alongside their Urborg to essentially assemble Tron, and they have another March to kill my Urza. So with an Ever-Flowing Chalice off the top, we can kick that for X's 2 and attack him with all of our creatures. This construct is going to slowly grow the more artifacts we find off the top, and the longer my opponent doesn't have a removal spell. They use a Relic of Progenitus to exile all the graveyards and draw a card, but it seems like the opponent is flooding because they just pass back. I want to highlight I made a mistake here by not putting a counter on my Ever-Flowing Chalice with the Surge Node in play. It shouldn't really matter though, and with a Cornucopia off the top we can cast that for the max and attack in for as much damage as possible. With the opponent playing another land and this time casting March to gain a ton of life and kill our construct, I remember to use the Surge Node to put a counter on the Cornucopia. And now with a Mishra's Bauble off the top, we're looking to play that and activate it on our opponent's upkeep because they do play Thoughtseize and I don't want to have 1 card in hand on their turn. Our suspicion that they're flooding is true because they play their last card in hand, Demolition Field, and slam the Shieldred. I don't think they're going to activate Demolition Field here though because they want to save it if they top deck a Fatal Push. We're going to keep using our Surge Node and hope that these 2 cards from the Mishra's Bauble and our draw step are going to be something relevant. With the first card being Core Tapper, that's not very exciting, but our second card being an Imperial Recruiter, this is actually lethal. This is because Imperial Recruiter can go get Kiki-Jiki, we can then cast Kiki-Jiki and copy Imperial Recruiter, which can then get Corridor Monitor, and then Corridor Monitor can untap Kiki-Jiki, and then we can combo. It's nice to actually combo with Kiki and Corridor Monitor, the first match, the first game I've ever played with this deck. But going into sideboarding, it's important to remember they're playing multiple cards like Orcish Bowmaster, Shieldred, as well as Karn the Great Creator. So I think a card like the One Ring, Mishra's Bauble are all weak in this matchup, and we need Metallic Rebuke so that we can counter Karn the Great Creators as they're so good against our build. Starting game 2, the opponent has a turn 1 Thoughtseize against our Kept 7. With the Metallic Rebuke, Cauldron, and Recruiter, I was expecting Metallic Rebuke to go to the bin here, but with the opponent taking Imperial Recruiter, clearly valuing the Demonic Tutor effect, I was worried that they either have more discard or a fast and aggressive hand. With an Urza off the top, the game proceeds slowly with us playing our Cauldron on turn 2 and the opponent starting to beat us down with an Orcish Bowmasters. We find an Urza Saga, but that's quickly destroyed by a Demolition Field, and things only spice up on our turn 4 when we can play our Urza. This may be seen as a risky line, but the opponent needs to have both a removal spell and Karn the Great Creator to put us in a bad spot, and even still, then we can bounce it with Otawara and then potentially counter it with Metallic Rebuke, assuming they have removal spell plus Karn. So when my Urza resolves and the opponent uses Sheoldred's Edict to make me sacrifice it, I'm sweating here that they have the Karn the Great Creator, but with a Thoughtseize and a Fatal Push, they're just attacking in for 2 and passing the turn. After I activate Mishra's Bauble, seeing an Urborg on top of the opponent's deck, they slam another Orcish Bowmasters to put a lot of pressure on the board here. Now drawing 2 cards, one with Mishra's Bauble and one from my draw step, I'm taking a lot of damage from the Orcish Bowmaster's trigger. Finding an Emery is really nice here though, because now we can play our Mountain, play our Emery for 2 mana, and we have access to Otawara for 3 mana to bounce the token to keep our life total at a high count. Now remember, their top card was Urborg, so my opponent's hand is Urborg Unknown. So when the opponent just attacks in for 4, I could theoretically take 4 damage here and hold up Metallic Rebuke, but I think this is a mistake. The opponent passed last turn with 4 mana up and just played an Orcish Bowmaster. I think if they had something like Karn the Great Creator, that would have been slammed last turn. So I think we can put them on a brick in hand plus Urborg. So I'm taking a gamble here, but it makes a lot of sense to do this, and the opponent just passes. On their end step, I try to activate my Cauldron to exile the Urza to put a counter on my Emery and also give it some nice activated abilities. But the opponent has a Cling to Dust to exile my Urza in response so that I don't get a counter or the activated abilities. It's also important to remember that Cauldron can exile a card from any graveyard, but I actually forgot in this moment because I was so excited that I found an Urza off the top. So after slamming my Urza, putting a Mishra's Bauble from my graveyard into play, I have Metallic Rebuke up here as well as the Cauldron. And with the opponent paying 4 mana for a Damnation that was found off the top of the deck, I can counter that with my Metallic Rebuke and also exile the Cling to Dust with the Cauldron, as I have now remembered I can do this. From here, we are playing limited Magic the Gathering. We are just playing our cards and attacking with our creatures, and there's not really much my opponent can do with 2 1/1s in play. So we're just utilizing the Cauldron, and the opponent scoops it up, and we win round 1, match 1. Going into the second round, we had to mulligan a no-land 7, but we have a very nice 6 with both mana sources and Urza's Saga, as well as half of the combo with Corridor Monitor. Here, I'm going to use Mishra's Bauble and my Flooded Strand to look at the top card of my library. As it's an Urza Lord High Artificer, I decide to shuffle it away with my Flooded Strand. In hindsight, I believe this to be a mistake, and that's because my hand is full of mana. Having Everflowing Chalice, I can multi-kick on turn 2, as well as a Surge Node coming off of this Urza Saga on later turns. We definitely want that Urza in our hand. With the opponent having a basic Plains and a Springleaf Drum, we can almost certainly put them on Hammer Time. But now, having an Urza Saga, Core Tapper, and Cornucopia, we have a beautiful turn here. Now I can play my Cornucopia for X is 0. That puts that on the table. Let's cast our Core Tapper, sacrifice it, put 2 counters on our Cornucopia, and now we can cast our Everflowing Chalice with Multi-Kicker. This is setting up for a very explosive turn down the line because we have Corridor Monitor and Imperial Recruiter in hand. With Corridor Monitor being able to untap the Cornucopia, the Surge Node that is eventually coming off this Urza Saga is also going to be very useful. With the opponent playing a Stoneforge Mystic and getting Caldra Complete, we find a Surge Node off the top, which can put another counter on this Cornucopia. Now the Cornucopia taps for 3 mana of any color, so let's get this Imperial Recruiter down for free, and get our Kiki Jiki. I am slightly worried that the opponent could have something like a Solitude in hand, but that is very rare for Hammer Time decks and is only in a couple lists in the main. It is an option in the sideboard though, so we'll have to think about that in future games. Getting a Surge Node off our Urza Saga, we can use both of the nodes to put 2 counters on the Cornucopia. Now with our Cornucopia having 5 charge counters, we can tap it for 5 blue. Use 2 of that to untap the Cornucopia, and then play our Kiki Jiki. Now, we can go for the combo kill. Going into sideboarding, I think the Cauldron is a bit too slow, as well as with our opponent's removal spells most likely being exiling only, there's no need for it. Game 2 goes quite poorly, as the opponent has an Urza Saga that's about to tick up to 3, and when I play my Engineered Explosives, I have to pay 2 for the Spell Pierce, and they have 2 hammers to equip to the Stoneforge Mystic, which kills me. I might have been able to play the Core Tapper to chump block there, but they probably had Shadow Spear in the deck. I didn't really play that game optimally. And then game 3, sadly, they have a very fast Pithing Needle on Engineered Explosives, and our deck just completely lets us down, and we die. Going into the third round, game 1 we're on the play with a beautiful hand. Having 2 Surge Nodes and a Cornucopia is great because we're going to be accelerating our mana on early turns, as well as having this Urza will let us sink all of our mana into it. I'm laughing at the opponent when they have a turn 1 Ragavan because now we can utilize Corridor Monitor untapping Cornucopia to get a load of mana on the table as well as a huge blocker. With the opponent just playing a Dauthi Voidwalker on turn 2, we have no problem with this because the Urza is going to be coming down quickly. With the Mishra's Bauble off the top, we do have to use every single card in our hand to get the Urza on the table, but I really don't mind against the Grief Thoughtseize deck that we have to dump our hand. I'm also going to wait as long as possible before I use this Mishra's Bauble. Again, we don't want to be drawing cards if the opponent can Thoughtseize them. With the opponent just playing a Terminate on our Urza, we can activate Mishra's Bauble on their end step to find another payoff card so that we can try and work towards winning the game. We see a Marsh Flats on top of their deck, but that doesn't matter because they're most likely going to fetch it away with the Bloodstained Mire. With a Core Tapper and a Scalding Tarn off the top, we have to play our Core Tapper because we have the Construct token on the table and we want to be attacking for as much damage as possible. I only attack him with the Construct token, which they elect to chump block with the Ragavan. I probably should be attacking with my Corridor Monitors as well, just to try and put maximum pressure on. We start to get into a board stall here because my opponent's opening hand was clearly leaning heavily on a Ragavan Dauthi Voidwalker plan, which is just not great against our deck. So as we load up all of our mana onto the Cornucopia, we find a Mishra's Bauble and start attacking in for a lot of damage to put the pressure on. This ends up not mattering though because the opponent chump blocks with their Ragavan, we see an Undying effect on the top of their deck, and they play a Fable of the Mirrorbreaker hitting for 6. This is when we finally draw an Imperial Recruiter with a ton of mana on the table, which is a guaranteed kill because we know the last card in their hand. So we're going to cast Imperial Recruiter and we're going to get Kiki Jiki. Now, I decide to do something here for the benefit of everyone. Our opponent is playing Rakdos Scam, so while I can't scam the opponent here, I can scam them out of time on this earth. So I decide to make our Construct token a 69/69 and let the opponent sit there for a few minutes and watch me combo. My opponent has been scamming people throughout the week, I would assume, so let's scam them out of some time. The opponent had the last laugh though, because I'm just going to show you this clip of game 3 to see how it went. The opponent has a turn 2 scammed Fury, and they just quickly kill me. This happened in game 2 as well, they just managed to scam us. At least we got the game 1 dub. Overall, I had a ton of fun playing with this deck. It does need some tuning, but I definitely could see it working in the modern format. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave me some suggestions on decks that I should tune for my next videos. Also for you gambling degenerates, I am going to open the chest. These are from my legacy video from yesterday, so go check that out if you missed it, because we really did dominate with that list.